Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy. Anyway, so what do you got for us today, Claire?
We are going to head to a place where half of the United States rice comes from.
Ohio. No, just kidding.
It's also famous for its hot springs,
Washington.
and cheese dip was invented here.
I should know this.
You should. I laughed when I wrote it.
Well,
You don't have any guesses?
I don't know.
You stink. Arkansas.
I am way off.
So we're going to hone in on a couple living in particular in Little Rock, Arkansas. 32-year-old Debra, 40-year-old Roy Taylor in 1988. Now, Debra and Roy have been together since Debra was 19. They fell in love, were all swoony, and get hitched in 77. They'll end up having two sons who, at the time period we're talking, are 7 and 4. And then they will adopt a little girl. She's just over a year old. They pretty much have a perfect little American family. Now, the Taylors also have a pool installation business where Roy would be the one who goes out in the field, and then Debra worked in the office, keeping a handle on the office management side. Now, Roy was also in the National Guard, so if you're not familiar with that, he would have weekends that he has to do his National Guard duty, so he did that alongside having that pool business. But that's just a quick snippet of all the things of where and when and who we're going to be talking about.
Okay.
So we're going to start off on a Saturday, October 22nd, 1988. It's Roy's weekend for his National Guard duties, so Debra plans for her and the kids to go to Texas to visit her brother. It's not too far of a drive. It's just 150 miles away from their home. And since he's going to be gone the weekend, it's, a perfect opportunity for her and the kids to go see her brother.
Makes sense.
And I'm sure you can relate to the chaos a morning of travel is going to be. So she's trying to get ready, multiple kids fed, packed, loaded into the car, on top of making sure her husband has anything he needs for his day before he heads out. But, the level of chaos that can be. Because I already told you the kids' name, or the ages 7, 4, and about a year.
Yeah, I would hate the drive, too. I can't.
Well,
because she's going to be by herself.
Yes.
So, yeah, that would suck.
But I imagine, again, it's a bit of a chaotic morning, loading everybody into the car. And just when it's right after 10 a.m., when Debra is just like, oh my God, I don't think I unplugged the iron. So she's going to call her neighbor and be like, she's super worried because she thinks while she was trying to get his uniform ready for him to go, that she didn't turn it off. Everybody's in a hurry to get out of the house. It reminds me of a little bit of Home Alone kind of thing of somebody forgot Kevin. But one of those levels of as soon as she's on the road and close to her brother's house, that she's like, if I left the iron on, nobody's going to be home for days. This could be horrific. And she can't call her husband because he's doing his duty stuff.
He's dead.
And she can't turn around. So she's just she'll call up her neighbor and be like, I feel like a crazy person because I can't remember if I unplugged the iron. Can you run over and just make sure it's unplugged? That way I don't come back to a house burnt to cinders.
She killed her husband. She's sending the neighbor to go check on it.
So her neighbor is all...
She really messed up.
Sure, I'll go on over there.
I'd be pissed.
And... But being a kind, understanding neighbor, she heads over.
And it's a woman?
She doesn't find the iron plugged in. She instead finds Roy dead on the living room floor.
Called it.
His boots and uniform still neatly resting on the couch. You're a sumbitch for ruining my case.
I thought I'd be wrong. I thought you were going to say it was like her brake line was cut or something. Not.
I know. I was specifically trying to write it so you wouldn't guess, and you went and spoiled it.
Dude, can I just say, though, I would be pissed because I'm guessing she killed her husband. If I found out, if my neighbor calls me and they're like, oh my God, I need you to go check on the house, and I find their significant other murdered,
Can I just say I'm going to be mad if I find out you did it and then sent me over to go witness that?
Well, I'm just going to say all these nice neighbors, do not go check on them. That's what the police do their little, you can call for a welfare check.
I don't know.
I guess it's the iron. Fine.
Well, yeah, and because the welfare check, we've seen too many times where they go knock on the door, they look around, they're like, "Oh, it looks fine," and they leave. And then it's like on the third or fourth time that the police actually go out there that somebody's like, "Oh, you know what? I didn't notice this here blood smeared across the front door."
And they're not going to go out to do a wellness check on the iron.
Yeah, that is
Well,
definitely bottom of the list priorities.
the neighbor is going to scootaloo on out of there and call the police. The police are going to come out and determine that Roy had been shot 3 times at close range by a .38 revolver. And initially, they're thinking maybe somebody saw Debra leaving and didn't realize Roy hadn't left and they were going to rob the place. I don't know. But that's where they're like, maybe it was a burglary gone wrong. But then nothing was missing. But then they're still like, well, maybe it was somebody who was breaking in and panicked. And then when they killed Roy, they panicked again and skedaddled. But then when they're looking around, it's real weird because not only is nothing taken or ransacked, anything like that, but the garage door that appeared to be the way somebody came in was broken from the wrong direction. You kicked it out rather than kicked it in. And so they're doing the whole, all right, so this has a very strong feeling that this was staged to look like a stumbled upon a burglar kind of thing. So who could have wanted to kill Roy and then try to make it look like a break-in? Investigators are going to turn
to the wife. It's always the wife.
Well, yeah.
Or the girlfriend. Or
Yeah,
boyfriend.
so that's who they look at first, the spouse, because generally they're the ones who want their spouse dead. But they confirm that Debra was at her brother's house with her children during the time of his death, so it's time to dig a little further. Now, Debra was Roy's third wife. His first His first ended in divorce in 1973, and he had 2 children with that wife. Now, her name's Brenda. So the police are going to go talk to Brenda, and she would say that Roy was a handsome and loving man and maintained a fairly close relationship with his children, but he really loved the ladies and has a pretty hard time staying in one place.
That's a nice way of saying he has a wandering penis.
I would assume that might have been an issue and led to their divorce, and she's just like, I didn't kill him, and it wouldn't help or hurt her in any way if he lived or died. So they're going to go to the second wife. Now, that marriage was super brief and was almost over as quick as it began before Roy met Debra, and then their love story started.
He's a pig. I know he's dead, but geez.
So then police are doing the whole head scratching and start talking to friends and family who describe Roy as a ladies' man and how he was screwing around everywhere and how he didn't just install pools. I heard that.
Well, I know you're not supposed to talk bad about the dead, and generally when people are asked about someone that died, they only remember like
they were so great.
Yeah, so the fact that people are like, yeah, he's a bit of a man whore, then yeah, I'm going to say take that times 100.
I find it disturbing when, and I don't know if obviously if the person's dead, I don't know if they're aware of it, but how many times that like they think they're pretty good at sneaking around, but then it's like, it's not a secret. Everybody knows you're a man whore, and it's not a secret. You're really bad at it, but in your head you think you're really good at it kind of thing. I don't know if that's the case, but they would track down one of Roy's ladies on the side who happened to be engaged to another man at the time.
God.
But both he and she had alibis during Roy's shooting, so they're back to the drawing board. And then they're doing the head scratching, going...
The wife hired somebody.
So then they're like...
The wife has a boyfriend.
Let's take another peek at Debra, because now that we've learned all this could be a woman scorned kind of scenario of maybe... Since everybody else seemed to know he was throwing his pecker around, maybe she learned of that, and that seems bitter enough to be a motive. Now, they start digging into the family finances and see that Roy has a life insurance policy of $200,000 plus another $50,000 from the National Guard. I think that was supposed to be $500,000.
Trying to,
But regardless, he's got,
she stands to get some stuff.
yeah. But just a few months before Roy died, the $200,000 life insurance policy increased by $300,000.
Okay, people, when you're going to off your spouse,
Don't bump up the life insurance.
you're just stuck with whatever the policy was to begin with. Okay. I hate to break it to you. That's just the way it works. Not saying you should go kill your spouse, but.
Right. But so, mind you, during the throes of this investigation, days are going by and it's going to be Roy's funeral. And that's when they really get suspicious because you would think you would have a crazy with grief spouse on your hands because her husband was taken from her life so suddenly and in a tragic way.
No.
But instead, she shows up with a family friend, Henry Price.
Called it.
And it's not a role of a grieving widow that she's playing. And it appears to everyone there that Henry's more than just a friend.
Well, does it matter? Because realistically,
So that's what I kind of did a head scratcher at is like, okay, so everybody knows her husband is diddling around, but then it's all, oh no, she's got a boyfriend.
Well,
okay, if she's fucking one dude and it's serious, not to say cheating in any capacity is okay, but he's throwing his willy around everywhere.
yeah.
So what the fuck? What is wrong with everybody in Little Rock? They're just passing around their genitals.
Put that to the side. The fact that she's not like emotionally distraught at the funeral. If I just found out my husband was cheating with anything and everything that walked by, it's going to affect your grieving process.
Well, I feel like also for your little kids. Because how do you have kids of all little ages? And I would imagine they want to know where their dad was.
Yeah. I feel like there would be enough bitterness wrapped in finding out that he's cheating that it'd be like, it'd be harder not to be angry. Because, you know, anger is part of the stages of grief to begin with. But then you find out that they're a cheating, lying piece of shit.
Yeah.
I knew it. Sorry, I've really blown up your case today.
You really are. Is this like getting me back for when I was a good guesser on your cases?
Yes.
It's really, it's bothering me. You've watched too much IDTV.
I don't watch it at all.
Okay, anyway.
This just came naturally.
So who is this sumbitch, Henry? Well, Henry was a longtime family friend.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, he actually did side jobs on the pool motors every now and then at the Taylor's pool business. And not only that, but Henry was married and had 2 kids with his wife.
Oh.
And it turns out, so they're going to go talk to Henry's wife first.
These police are just pot stirrers.
Well, they go to Henry's wife, Sherry, and she's all, yeah, I know they're sneaking around. I found out when I overheard her call when she called up Henry on October 1st, telling him the coast was clear and he could come on over. Oh. Now, keep in mind, Roy was killed on the 22nd of October, so this isn't but a few weeks prior to Roy to being dead. And she said she immediately confronted Henry's cheating ass and told him that he needed to make a choice. Either it's her and their children or Debra. He chose Debra and walked out of their house.
Oh, shit.
Right. So now, like, they're in the beginning stages of going through a divorce, but she's definitely a scorned woman because she's like, fuck that sumbitch that, like, she didn't think he was going to make that choice, but he did. And
God, I hope you're not about to tell me she killed the other lady's husband because that would make her extra stupid.
Why would you do that?
I don't.
I feel like other than a mistaken, she was trying to shoot Debra.
Unless she's trying to frame her.
Anyway, well, Sherry would go on and describe that Roy was a nice and kind feller, but Debra was the sneaky, conniving sumbitch, which I feel like the detectives probably took with a grain of salt since Roy was known to be a ladies' man. So, of course, he'd be nice to Sherry, and Debra is her husband stealer, so...
Have you ever noticed that when you have 2 people that are cheaters, the women always tend to blame the women?
Yeah.
Blame them both.
Right. But it seemed like practically an epidemic in Little Rock because I was like, this is such a web of people having sex with people they should not be having sex with. But now, mind you, since the funeral, police would be keeping tabs on Debra and on Henry. and they would track them back to a La Quinta Inn, which seemed to be where they played pickle rendezvous.
Had the pickle.
Mm-hmm. So that leads them checking out Deborah's phone records, and she has tons of calls between her and Henry, like days before Roy's killed. Now, one phone call in particular is going to stand out because it's a call that Deborah receives, and it's a very short call, but it's made from the Taylor home to Deborah's brother's house in Texarkana, and it was made on the morning Roy died. Now, naturally, all this makes Deborah and Henry the top of the suspect list. So the police are going to have Deborah come down on November 4th to talk about the case and help them try to figure out who could have killed Roy. Now, mind you, up until this point, Deborah doesn't know all the things that the police have uncovered. So they ask Deborah about any affairs Roy could have had, or maybe any drug contacts, anything at all. How about any affairs she might have known about? Mind you, they already know that Deborah is diddling Henry. They just wanted to see how forthcoming she would be with helping with their case. But they don't tell her that. And Deborah lies and is all, nope, no affairs, no drugs, I don't know who could have done it. And she walks out of the police station. So then the police bring in Henry to chit-chat November 9th. They would lay out the pictures they had of him and Deborah meeting up at the hotel, and Henry folds like a wet paper bag. He starts talking about how Deborah had said Roy was beating her, and that he had found out that her and Henry were sneaking around on him, and Roy was planning to kill Henry. So then Deborah and Henry started creating a plan to kill Roy to save Henry.
All right.
Initially, they discussed how they could make it look like a hunting accident or maybe a robbery at his office. During all that brainstorming is when Deborah increased the life insurance on Roy. Then that's when she has the idea of, why not her and the kids go visit her brother, and Henry would come into the house and kill Roy before he left for his National Guard weekend. Now, Deborah would give him a key to the back door so he could get into the house. He then would say that he called Deborah's brother's house in Texas, and the code that he had done, that he had killed Roy, was that she was going to need to buy a black dress. And that's exactly what he did before he hung up, which is why the call was so short.
That's disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
How long between that and her calling the neighbor to go check on him, I wonder?
I don't know. But he'd say he then took apart the gun and chunked it in the Arkansas River. Now, mind you, Deborah gets wind that the police are talking to Henry, so she calls the police station to find out what's going on. And they're all like, you might want to come down here. So she scurries onto the police station where they arrest both her and Henry.
Save them the gas.
I laughed at that one because she's so nosy and worried. And I was like, that's funny. But they'll both be arrested for capital murder.
Good.
Now, it was some people's opinion that Deborah knew that Roy was screwing around on her, and she wasn't thrilled, obviously. But she also wanted to keep her living conditions comfortable for her children. She wanted to keep her house, her job at the pool company. And mind you, if it's the family business, that'd be a little difficult to maintain that job and be divorced. So Roy had to go. Now, prosecutors would make a deal with Henry since they felt that Deborah was the mastermind behind all the lies that manipulated Henry into killing her husband, and he would agree to testify against Deborah in exchange for a 40-year sentence.
Ugh.
Now, Deborah would be found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. Now, in 1989, Roy's children from his previous marriage, who at this point are 16 and 19, would file a wrongful death suit against Deborah and Henry for their father's death. They would be awarded $1.5 million.
They're in jail.
Attorneys would be like, it's going to be mighty difficult to collect on that.
I mean,
they had that Deborah would pay $600,000, Henry was to pay $400,000 in punitive damages, and then compensatory damages in the amount of $454, blah, blah, blah.
All right.
But I did the same thing. It's just like, but how do you get money from somebody who's sitting in jail?
I mean, I guess if anybody were to put money in like their commissary, or if they work to be able to buy stuff,
anything.
Yeah, they would get a portion of that.
Yeah. Now, she is still currently living and breathing and serving her time in the Arkansas Department of Corrections. Now, Henry was paroled in 2000 after he served 12 of his 40-year sentence.
Whoa.
So I feel like for him, he's going to be paying that debt.
Good luck to him. I would have rather stayed in prison.
Well, you don't know what his life was like in there.
Well, he's going to spend the rest of his life working and having his paychecks garnished.
As he should.
Well, yeah. I'm just
But
saying.
I did kind of, not that I don't feel bad for him.
Yeah. Way to make me seem like an asshole, by the way.
Well, I did feel sort of bad because the police kind of painted Henry as like a little bit of a simpleton. So that's why they felt that Debra was the mastermind, because she manipulated him and he fell right into it.
I mean,
the part that I told you we might have to cut out because I wrote it word for word because I was confused of what it meant. So that lawsuit with the children, the ones from the previous marriage, I don't know if you were considering that there were 3 children from Debbie and Roy's marriage, but the 3 younger children would not contest a grant of 1/3 of the marital property to Debra if she gave up the claim to the $500,000 life insurance policy, which means that the children cannot collect the jury award from marital property.
Okay.
I didn't know what they were talking about. So for the way I interpreted it was like that lawsuit.
I think that's like the house. It's like the house and all the other, like their joint things. You know, like when Dad died and all his estate.
But why couldn't the children collect on that?
I think it was just an exchange of they didn't want to deal with all that crap.
Well, so I guess it was confusing to me because I feel like, so when Roy's children from the previous marriage, when Debra was ordered to pay that $600,000, I guess because that would be, the house would be the marital assets between her and Roy. But if she doesn't claim that, that would be part of the $600,000 that would go to the other children, and the 3 youngest would get the $500,000 life insurance policy or whatever's left over.
It sounds like it's split pretty even.
Wait, I mean, I just thought that was a weird. I mean, obviously Debra wouldn't get anything from having her husband killed, but it would appear that the children got at least something, although there was like a teeny tiny disclaimer on there from the attorney that his $138,000 bill would be paid before anybody got anything.
Right. Usually they take it out of whatever the settlement is. Yeah.
So I would think that since there's at least a couple $100,000, I would think they got something. I don't know that they got the full $1.5 million.
Well,
but especially the 3 youngest, I don't know how much was left over. Because as you've done, and I realize that's the smallest portion of this case, but like the one case that you did where the kid inherited something, but his guardians pissed it away.
It wasn't even his guardians. It was his stepsisters.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, whatever, like, he never saw that money by the time he was an adult, is my point.
Yeah.
But I'm real disappointed that you tracked that one.
It was pretty easy to track. Don't worry. I found a case that's going to blow your mind.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be my next one. It's going to be the one after that. I got to do them in order.
Well, I'm definitely not going to remember.
Well,
I don't know how you guessed it all. I was thrown off every time somebody else was having sex with somebody else, especially when somebody Roy was having sex with was already engaged to someone else.
Dude, people are pigs.
Well, and then Debra having sex with Henry, I kind of did the whole good for his wife, or Henry's wife, for having the balls to confront his cheating ass.
Yeah.
But I do feel like she didn't expect him to call her bluff.
Well, and he's a piece of shit. Walk out on your wife and your kids. Says a lot about what kind of guy he is. Even more so than him cheating with an already married woman.
Mm-hmm. But I was like, that family tree is more like a shrub.
Those kids need to be careful. Everybody needs a DNA test.
Right. Well, because you figure Roy had the kids from his first marriage. He was married 3 times. Then Debra, whatever they had, she was having sex with Henry. Henry was married with somebody else, their kids. That, like, this is kind of coming full circle. I was waiting to find out that Henry's current wife was one of Roy's ex-wives, but it wasn't.
That would have been funny. I would not have seen that coming.
Well, it didn't happen.
Yeah. And my advice to the population out there of cheaters,
Don't go check on your neighbor's house.
yeah, well, that too, but don't cheat. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Just break up.
Why no? Well, oh no, I was having a different thought entirely. But
I heard your dark thoughts. It made me darty-eyed over here.
I was sitting there thinking it was a shitty situation. I do think because he was cheating on her, not to give her a reason to kill her husband, but I feel like that's what made her go find her own fella. And I feel like they were kind of in a shitty situation because their income was their family business. So a divorce would have been a difficult, like he would have had the business, but he had nobody to run it.
So it's a little disappointing on her, though, because knowing he was cheating and the way that made her feel, to turn around and start cheating with another married man, she's putting another woman, other kids in the same situation that she was put in. Like, why would you do that to somebody?
Yeah, I don't know that people give other people a thought process in making poor decisions because it's generally a selfish decision to begin with.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have blamed the one lady if she tried to kill Deborah.
No, she's a cheating ass whore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for that one.
That's all I got.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mind-fucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.